the market will pull a product out of your team if they want it. We could walk away from a deal if we had to. We had great revenue and we were a profitable business. As they say, like, companies are bought, not sold. Companies can be quite fixated on the deal or the acquisition, and then don't kind of think about, as much as you would expect, about how the integration goes. Post-transaction, the stress did not slow down. I'm sure that if you saw photos of me from 5 or 6 years ago, you probably wouldn't recognize me.
Hey again, and welcome to the NexChapter podcast, recorded here right in the Republic studio, as you can see behind my back. And think about it as a Republic for founders and entrepreneurs, where we share wisdom, have some fun, and celebrate the journey of another entrepreneur. I'm Raman Segal, the author of The Floundering Founder and the Toronto chapter co-lead for PEF. I'm also your host today, and that PEF thing is quite interesting because my co-lead is my guest today. This is the show for founders that are scaling and founders that have sold and that are figuring out what the heck happens next. And every episode features the 3 T's: the trajectory of the business and building a business worth buying, transaction, how that went down and what the entrepreneur learned, and the transition, the reality after the deal is done and what is actually working. Now, think of it as unfiltered wisdom from post-exit founders. All right, so my guest today is the brilliant Mr. Joe Rideout. And Joe is someone I've got to know really well in the last 6 months or so. We, as I mentioned, we lead the PEF Toronto chapter together, and he is a really, really lovely fella, very different to me, in fact, which is probably why we work so well together. And a bit of background about Joe: he is a software engineer and turned entrepreneur. He co-founded Perpetua, which is a SaaS platform that automates advertising for brands on Amazon and other marketing places. The company was acquired in 2021 and became part of Essential's digital commerce segment. And his next chapter, Joe, is building at the intersection of technology and human performance while co-founding the Burn Room, a Toronto-based fitness studio, which I also know very well because I attend that particular studio. He is a competitive marathon runner and a high rocks athlete, passionate about the intersection of ambition, health, and long-term performance. And what's amazing about that last section there around his health and fitness, and he is a really, really top marathon runner. In fact, just around the time of recording, he is off to Tokyo to run the marathon in Japan, and he runs them very, very quickly. And what's fascinating about that is, as Joe goes into today, he certainly was not a marathon runner a few years back. In fact, he was the exact opposite of a marathon runner. And the price that entrepreneurs and founders often pay for the obsession around the business they love. So this is a really, really deep, meaningful, passionate, humble episode, I would say, as well, but lots of reflection and a very kind of happy ending as well. Please don't forget to follow us wherever you're watching or listening, subscribe, and give us a kind rating, and enjoy today's show with Joe. Welcome to NexChapter.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be fun because a lot of the guests that I've had on the show, I don't know as well as I know you, and you and I have hung out quite a lot in the last few months, and I know a bit about your story, but I'm really, really excited to kind of bring the whole story to life for our audience today.
Great.
All right, let's start as we always start. Did you bring a drink and tell us what you're drinking? And it's got to be something healthy, knowing you, Joe.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I'm a big coffee fan. I'm fueled by caffeine. So today I brought this little cold brew shot
Oh,
called
wow.
Hatch. It's in a cute little can here.
The branding is
And
very cool.
yeah.
Is
And
that a
the plant,
Toronto brand? Is that like a Canadian Toronto
I
thing?
don't know actually. Yeah, crafted in Canada.
There you go. You're flying the flag as well.
Hatch Beverage Company, Markham.
There you go. That's just up the road from us, Joe.
Yeah, yeah.
We could maybe go do a tasting with them. Maybe they'll let us come for tasting. Okay, I'm here. As you know, I've just got back from Mexico and I've got a bit of the Mexico belly, I'm going to call it. And so I've got this ginger and turmeric hip hop drink. I think depending on when this episode comes out, I get this stuff shipped from the UK, like many of my drinks. Not that they aren't great drinks here, but there are certain things that I like to get shipped from the UK, and it is absolutely delicious and is going to settle my my stomach, no doubt. But well, look, mate, it's so good to have you here. I wanna start by talking about your kind of journey, because you obviously had a business. You've actually had a couple of businesses that you've exited, and so rather than just focus on the second one, what I thought might be worthwhile starting with, Joe, is maybe talk about kind of both business journeys. Obviously focusing on the second one with a little bit more detailed, because that one was more spectacular from an exit perspective. But I think it's really interesting for our audience to understand kind of some of the lessons and learnings you had from your first journey and how that how that impacted your second journey. So yeah, just talk to us about the trajectory of both businesses and any lessons and learnings that you had along the way as well.
Definitely. So the first business, this is going back a while now, we founded kind of in the social networking, mobile messaging craze. So kind of right around when WhatsApp was picking up steam. It was a product called Beluga that eventually became Facebook Messenger. And so co-founder and I started a messaging app, which the killer feature was sending GIFs and a built-in GIF search, which of course now is something that every messaging app has, but at the time it was a novel feature.
How long ago, how many years ago was this, Joe?
We started in 2011, actually.
I mean, that's ahead of its time. I mean, it's amazing because it's such a intuitive part of messaging now. But wow, that was 15 years ago. You guys were thinking about this, which is pretty
Totally.
cool.
And we were both engineers, so we put a lot of work into making sure the GIFs sent very fast and the GIF search loaded really fast. So it was a delightful experience. Raised a small seed round for that company, grew the team to about 5 people, and eventually kind of picked up and got some decent viral traction. So at our peak, we had a few 100,000 daily active users. It was growing. We were hitting the higher and higher in the App Store charts, and then started to get some inbound interest from some of the other messaging apps and social networking companies. And then, ultimately decided it would be a good time to sell the business. I was a first-time founder and was looking for a win. Didn't turn into quite the win that I'd hoped for, but there was definitely a lot of learning, and I think experiences and connections that I made that led to bigger success the second time around.
And why wasn't the win? Why wasn't it the win that you'd hoped? Like, was there anything you can share in terms of how it exited, or like what happened in the sale process that led to, if you're able to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So we ended up selling to Kik Messenger, which was another big Canadian messaging company. Was much farther along than we were. They were kind of up in the hundreds of millions of users. And the way that the deal was structured, it was predominantly an equity deal. So we were trading shares of our company for shares in Kik. So another way of looking at that is, trading up equity in a private company that you control for equity in a private company that you don't control. And I think that I maybe like an optimistic view. When I thought about the value of that equity, I was thinking about it in terms of best case scenario if everything went well. And wasn't thinking about the kind of the road ahead to actually solidifying and getting some liquidity on maybe what the value of that equity was on paper.
Interesting. So you didn't cash out in the truest sense on day one. You kind of rolled everything in the hope that, our X amount is going to be worth 10 times as part of this bigger animal. Okay. And that
Exactly.
obviously didn't quite materialize in the way you'd hoped.
Exactly.
Okay. So take us to the second business, which does have a happier ending as far as I know.
So the second business was Perpetua. We were in the Amazon advertising space. And, maybe to speak to some of the things that went well or that we did well, if you're not familiar with Amazon advertising, it kind of went from not being a thing to being the third largest ad platform by spend in the world quite quickly. But that's predominantly due to sponsored product ads, where as someone who's selling on the Amazon marketplace, you can pay to have your products promoted at the top of search results. And so I think one of the things that Perpetua did really well was to just find and be in that market. And I think, the way that we were able to do that was by, being quite experimental at the beginning. We tested a lot of, we had sort of a rough thesis around advertising and the role that it plays in growth, but we were testing different ad platforms. We were testing Pinterest ads and LinkedIn ads and the Amazon affiliate program, Google ads. We were tying things together. And then we started to meet a lot of people in the Amazon seller community and realized, one, just, how quickly these seller businesses were exploding as people were, making, tremendous wealth, kind of, one or two people working out of a warehouse in Brooklyn, growing very fast, and that the ads were just so effective and such a big part of how they grew their business.
Yeah.
And that it was at the time relatively underserved by software. If you look at the number of applications that were out there to, let's say, support Shopify sellers, there's thousands of them, but for Amazon sellers, you could kind of count them on one hand.
Why was that, Joe? Then was that just because it was a new, like you said, it went kind of overnight? It almost went from being a nothing to one of the, I think you said, the third biggest platform. Was it just in its infancy and you guys kind of stumbled across this niche?
Yeah, it was in its infancy. It was a bit more of a walled garden, so the APIs weren't available at the beginning. So we had to do a lot of, work to build things without API access. Make sure we were the first people to get API access when it came up.
Interesting. And then where did it go from here then? So and was it all manual at this point? So these guys making, you mentioned like someone, warehouse in Brooklyn selling goods. Were they having to do these ads manually themselves, or were they just not advertising at all?
It was a lot of manual work. So one of the big things for Amazon advertising is finding the best keywords to advertise your products on, and best meaning, different keywords will have different volume of search, but also different ROI, might have different impact on your organic results. So you really want to know how much to spend and how much you're willing to bid on a click for each keyword. And that was predominantly done manually with spreadsheets. Some people were working with agencies, but everyone was just kind of figuring it out. And so, we were one of the first companies that took a more data-driven, AI-driven approach to building that feedback loop of testing keywords, doubling down on what works.
So who in your customers were the product sellers, right? Like whoever was selling them. It wasn't like Amazon was paying you guys. It was you were being paid directly from sellers that wanted to utilize your platform to almost like I don't know the Amazon world, but it reminds me of like old school kind of SEO on Google, like a similar kind of concept.
Yeah, definitely. So broadly, there was two buckets of customers. There's what you call Amazon sellers that are purely on Amazon's third-party marketplace.
Yeah.
So they're selling whatever they want for the most part, setting their own prices, managing their own inventory. So they would use our product. Then there's on the vendor side, it's a little bit different. These are brands that are selling their products to Amazon wholesale.
Okay.
And then Amazon is setting the price in the inventory. But in both cases, it's the seller or the brand that pays for the ads.
That's
So
okay. You guys were in the right place at the right time, I suspect, to grow. And what did you mentioned? Obviously, your kind of co-founding team. Briefly, was it the same co-founding team as your first business job? Was it a different set of people around?
It was
the
a different team. So that was, if I could speak to one other kind of key decision that led to the success of the second company, it was, choosing the right co-founder. Roscoe, who I worked with, is a very accomplished serial entrepreneur. He had some big success before. One of the best that I know, a great person to work with.
Yeah.
And particularly, we'll get to this in a little bit, but when it comes down to the actual deal structure, Roscoe is someone that's incredible at negotiating deals, but also in a way where everybody is aligned. So when I talked about in my first exit, where I kind of valued the equity as though everything worked out in the best possible way, I think Roscoe did a great job of anticipating the things that might go wrong and ensuring the deal would be aligned either way.
Hold that thought. We're going to come to that. Do you mind just, I suppose, again, if you think about some of our audience being people that are scaling a business or thinking about maybe even starting a business, what you mentioned kind of choosing the right co-founder. How did you approach, and this is obviously no disrespect to anyone that you had previously, but how had your thinking changed in the second business? Were you just more mindful of how important the co-founding team was? Because I imagine the first one, it might just have been a case of, hey, let's start a business. Like, I don't know. And you just went into it. Whereas this, were you much more intentional about things on the second business?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely.
Yeah.
First time entrepreneur,
you just make it up as you go along.
Make it up as you go along.
Yeah.
You don't know sort of like the different scenarios you might end up in. And so when you're doing it for the second time around and you kind of can anticipate the types of challenges you might face in the future, I think that helps you choose, who you want to have at your side when you have to face those challenges.
And going back to the business as well, was there obviously you mentioned that you'd kind of stumbled across this niche and you're in the right place at the right time to an extent, and you were able to service. Was there a particular thing that was the catalyst that led to the growth of the business? Was it just Amazon's marketplace maturing, or was there anything within the business that you guys did that really, it could have been a product thing, it could have been adding team members? Was there anything that you did that really, really led to like the growth of the business and really kind of supercharged the growth?
I think the thing that I'll always go back to is, you have to find an amazing market. How you do that is maybe a little more challenging. I think in some sense we did have a bit of luck in stumbling upon such an incredible market. But when you find a great market, like the market will, and if you have a half decent team, the market will pull a product out of your team if they want it. And that's the experience that we had early on, was that these sellers were making money, the ads were working, and the better the ads worked, the more money they made. So when they got a glimpse of what our technology could do, they were willing to pay. There's a few early experiences that we had at Perpetua that were reflective of this. So our first couple of customers, we hadn't even built Stripe billing into the app yet, but they wanted our algorithms so badly. Someone emailed us a credit card number, and we had to say like, no, don't do that. We'll get the Stripe billing in tomorrow. Like, give us a couple of days. But yeah, when you find that kind of market, then you kind of have the wind at your back. Then the second piece, I think, is we were able to hire a really great founding team. People always say that, the first 10 to 15 hires that you make will define the the character and the culture of the company. And again, I think through the strength of our networks, but also through a bit of luck, we hired some incredibly exceptional people that, went on to become incredible leaders and really, really shape the company.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the fortune of meeting some of these people as well out and about, and it's amazing to hear the impact that you had on the relatively young people as well and what they're doing now, and which must be very, and we can talk about that as well later in terms of kind of what life looks like today. Okay, so the business is growing really, really quickly. I love what you said there around kind of the market pulling a great product from your team. I agree as well in terms of, I look back at my own career and, my business interests have all been in the kind of niche of the pharmaceutical B2B supply chain, like who hangs out in that space, right? And I just ended up there by luck and recognized the market wanted something. And, it's one thing recognizing it, it's another thing doing something about it and taking the risks, which you guys did. So yes, there's an element of luck, but obviously you guys doubled down and went for it. And then talk us through then what kind of, how did the transaction and, you obviously led to growth, and I imagine you had lots of suitors interested in the business. And I'm also interested to hear not just about kind of how the deal went down in the transaction, but you had first-hand experience how this doesn't go to plan. So were you like, did someone come knocking on your door? Did you guys run a process? And obviously you share what you can share, Joe, because obviously there's sensitivities, commercial sensitivities.
I think that maybe the thing to start with is that we had great revenue and we were a profitable business, which, we ran a pretty lean team. All of our product and engineering was here in Toronto. That gave us a lot of optionality. Like, we didn't have to exit. We didn't have to raise money. We could take our time. We could walk away from a deal if we had to. So I think we had good leverage. And then, as they say, like, companies are bought, not sold. It was a really good time in the market where people were starting to recognize just how big of a market this was, how fast Amazon seller ecosystem advertising was growing. And there was some consolidation with some of the larger players looking around to buy up some of the smaller players. So there was a good window timing open in the market. So we started a process, between getting LOI and closing was about 5 months. And, through that whole time, we had a very small, first it was just the founders, and then kind of expanded out there. We had a pretty small team working on it. But we had to continue to
run the business.
Yeah. I mean, we couldn't, we were very optimistic about it, but we couldn't count on it.
I want to go back to something you said there. Like, you were obviously a SaaS business, and you mentioned being lean and profitable. And I come from a service business background, not a SaaS business background. But those are two words I don't normally associate with SaaS businesses. Was the goal always to become profitable in your own right, and you could have continued to scale this thing and grow it, or did you? Because presumably you had some fundraising as well for this for this business as well.
I don't think the goal was necessarily to, certainly just to become profitable and continue to run it as a profitable business. It was always to continue to grow.
Yeah.
But I guess we were just very fortunate in that our revenue grew quite quickly.
Yeah.
We were thinking about another funding round to accelerate growth, but we're not in a hurry. And that all kind of coincided with the M&A interest, and ultimately we ended up going down that path.
Okay, so you've got a very good business. You got the timing seems great. Obviously, I imagine it was a very busy time for you guys, and we're going to come back to the impact that all of this had on you personally in a few minutes as well. So talk us through then how the transaction kind of occurred, and you mentioned Roscoe before in terms of his role, and and having someone you could lean on from a guidance perspective. And presumably you didn't want to just have equity in, hand over your equity to the equity of another business, given your first round. So talk to us about what that looked like and what decisions you made as well in terms of the transaction and what you maybe learned from the first time round as well.
Yeah. So credit where credit is due. Roscoe really drove the deal process. And I'm, very thankful again to him for negotiating a great deal for everybody, for the investors, for the co-founders, for the team. It was very, very aligned. What we ultimately landed on was a structure that involved some upfront consideration and then an earnout that paid out over 4 years that was based on hitting certain revenue milestones.
4 years. That's, I mean, that makes me shudder at the thought of doing a 4-year. Now, did it not actually be the business that bought you guys? Were they a competitor? Were they a bigger? Were they different? Just to give some context to, you mentioned being obviously revenue growing, profitable, strong team, good product, etc., etc. What was it in terms of the acquiring company? Were they a similar business that wanted to acquire the technology, or talk to us about like what made you so attracted to them?
So the acquirer was Essential, which is a UK company listed on the London Stock Exchange, public company. It's been around for, I want to say, 75 years. They're kind of an old, well, at the time they were kind of an old school media publishing company.
Media business, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So owned a lot of media publications, events. They own the Cannes Lions Festival, Money 2020. But they had, 2 years prior to acquiring Perpetua, they had bought Flywheel Digital, which was the largest Amazon native advertising agency in the US, representing a number of the largest brands managing their Amazon advertising strategy. And that acquisition had been a tremendous success and had given Essential a kind of a view into this digital commerce, retail media world. And so they went on to buy Perpetua and a number of other businesses in this space to kind of be a new focus area for the Essential business.
Okay, so it was almost like I'll call it a digitization, a modernization strategy of going from where the old world was into where the new world, and you guys were part of that kind of roll-up strategy, buying really interesting companies in that space. And what happened next? And obviously you had a success. I always think about an earnout and think, I wonder, and I had a version of this, albeit it was different because it was private equity and I was I am still involved in the business. And so it's a different, what was life like the day after you sold versus the day before? Like, you have a big chunk of change in your pocket, you kind of, but you're still involved in the business, the team is still there. What are have your motives changed, number one? And also, like, what was it like working for a new business? Like, did they let you get on with it and just do what you're doing, or did they want to kind of meddle and, change everything?
I'd say that there was certainly a lot of excitement. There was a big sigh of relief because this had been 5 months of working on a deal, mostly in the dark. So to be able to tell the team, kind of sign off and everything was a good feeling. I would say nothing changed right away. And that was partly the way that Essential managed us, as we continued to be run as somewhat of an independent business, I'd say, for at least the first year. We continued to operate under the Perpetua brand. We had revenue targets we had to hit. Started to get a bit of light integration in terms of IT, bit of centralization of HR. So we kind of started the integration process, but the first year it was like later.
Yeah. Okay. It's like almost business as usual for the first year, some light integration. Okay. did you find that you were still as motivated as you? Like, had your motivations changed, or were you very much like, hey, like we're still here, we're still growing the business? You're clearly very entrepreneurial, and this was not your first business. And I always wonder about like what's going through people's minds when they're doing an earn out, or but you're also very, knowing you personally, you're a very diligent, respectful, good guy. So did you want to do a good job for these guys as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, entrepreneurs are, driven by autonomy and the ability to continue to build something big and important. And then also, the potential for reward and upside. So because we had that earn-out deal, there was still a lot of future potential for reward if we were able to hit bigger and bigger milestones within our acquirer. So like the kind of goals had changed, but there was still great upside for us and for the whole team if we could hit those goals. So that did keep me quite motivated. And we did continue to feel quite a bit of autonomy at the beginning. But I think in any M&A scenario, there's going to be integration, and that integration is going to increase over time. And it can be sort of more complex to continue to manage an earn-out structure as time passes and as integration gets deeper.
And it got more complicated for you guys because you weren't the last acquisition that they made. So talk to us about what happened, during that process in terms of the more acquisitions that came along, and how I assume it made the integration even more complicated when you're bringing together teams from different parts of the world.
Yeah, exactly. So, as I mentioned, Essential ended up buying about 13 companies in our space. Wow. And that was a mix of services businesses with an agency model and SaaS businesses. The one that we integrated the most tightly with was a company called Celex, which is based out of Berlin. Could be seen as a pre-acquisition as a direct competitor to Perpetua. And after that acquisition, we were merged together into a single team, which was challenging.
God, I imagine being. I'm shaking my head. I just imagine being merged with or like integrated with one of your direct competitors. It kind of like it makes my skin crawl. But did you? Yeah, and obviously a German business and a Canadian business. Like you also got like the obvious cultural piece as well. And did you guys manage to make it work, or was it? And
I should say, I don't mean to make it out as though this came from on high and we were forced together. It was a collective decision to bring these businesses together. But I think there was a lot of learning there in terms of if I were to be in this situation in the future, to really invest a lot in the integration process.
Yeah,
I think this happens. I mean, I've read stories about similar situations in other companies with M&A, where people or companies can be quite fixated on the deal or the acquisition, and then don't kind of think about as much as you would expect about how the integration goes or how you invest to ensure that the integration is successful.
Yeah,
there's actually, if you've ever read the book Build by Tony Fadell, it's the founder of Nest. Talks about the Google acquisition, and it's just interesting because you would think, Google has bought so many companies, they would just really have it together in terms of having a plan of how to bring Nest in and get them integrated. And it sounds like, they wanted the company, but they didn't really think that much about what they were going to do, what they were going to do with it after.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, what I've seen in my experience is you have deal origination teams and corporate development teams whose job is to get deals done, and they are incentivized to get deals done and think about what on paper what the synergies look like, what the bringing two together, less overhead or whatever, and increase profit, increase revenue, more market share, etc., etc. But they aren't the guys that are often responsible for for the integration. So it, I imagine that what wasn't the easiest thing. Even you said before as well, like SaaS and service are two different worlds. Like I wouldn't know where to start with a SaaS business, and so I imagine also integrating SaaS and service businesses have probably added a whole layer of complexity because the dynamic of the teams is different, right? The way revenue is looked at is different. Like I am reporting is different. The whole thing is very, very different. So I imagine that would have added more complexity to the whole situation.
Yeah, exactly. And that, kind of starting around 1.5 to 2 years in, there was a much more of, I guess, what you might call a hard integration, where all 13 of these companies were brought together under a single brand, which was the Flywheel brand. And, this was sort of made, this is public knowledge that Essential had plans to take Flywheel, spin it out as a new entity and list it on a US stock exchange. So that kind of plan led to an acceleration of all these 13 quite different companies and a mix of SaaS and services having to come together under one umbrella of integrated engineering, integrated HR, integrated IT, integrated sales.
Did the listing ever happen? I don't know how the story ends in that regard.
What ended up happening was right at the end of 2024, it was announced that Omnicom Media Group would be buying Flywheel from Essential.
Okay, and was that past your earn-out period by this point in time? Your earn-out had all been done, or was that kind of tied into all that?
It had a few months left. So kind of right, my earn-out went till April of 2025.
Okay, did you benefit from the acquisition then? Just out of curiosity, like did that work well for your team and the founders, or were you guys kind of done and dusted by that point to an extent?
It helped in the sense that it accelerated the earn-out.
Okay, cool. That's good ending to
timeline.
Yeah, timeline wise, yeah. Okay, cool. I want to move to like away from transaction and onto kind of transition. And obviously, you built and sold two businesses, and I only met you in the kind of I only know the version of Joe that exists today. And again, for our viewers and listeners, like Joe is a absolute fitness fanatic and also runs co-leads PEF here in Toronto with the post-exit founders chapter here in Toronto. So we've got to know each other both through the post-exit community and also just through the health and fitness stuff. But you've told me some stories about kind of the Joe of before I met you, and I'm like scratching my head. So again, like give our listener and viewers a bit of a sense of like the impact of the impact on you personally during the trajectory of building your businesses through the transaction, and how it impacted you as a person, how it impacted your life, your health, etc. And yeah, just to give some context to what you do now. And obviously I know what you do now, but I would love you I think it's a beautiful kind of way to talk about what you do now with the context of like what the before looked like.
Yeah, I think the short version is when I was a founder, I was pretty obsessed with the business and focused on it with great intensity. And as a result, I think, sort of let other areas of my life slip a little bit. Probably the most pronounced was my health. I'm sure that if you saw photos of me from 5 or 6 years ago, you probably wouldn't recognize me. I had a pretty sedentary lifestyle, not too active, had a poor diet, poor sleep, gained a lot of weight, and sort of was under a lot of stress. And at some point reached kind of a turning point where I realized, this is not sustainable.
Was there a specific turning point or an example you can give to kind of like, and this is not something this is not the first time I've heard this from you said something like being obsessed with the business, like that is in the DNA of founders growing successful businesses. And it's kind of like when a business is doing well as well, you just throw more time and effort and everything into it. So, and then obviously you went through a deal, and I imagine the transaction process as well really probably threw more kind of fuel on the fire of just being even more obsessed with it, because you had this kind of carrot dangled in front of you, right? Which kind of, so if you can talk about like, what was there a moment or an example of like, you're like, God, I need to sort myself out. I need to sort this aspect of my life out.
Yeah, because of the earnout, I still felt like there was a lot on the line personally and for the team in the first few years. So post-transaction, the stress did not slow down. If anything, it accelerated.
So it wasn't like the day the deal went, you were like, okay, I'm going to hit the gym. So that didn't happen. It was,
no.
Okay, interesting.
And I think this is changing, but there is a bit of a culture in startups and in tech around, dinners, nights out, drinking, socializing.
That's the best bit. It's
not to say anything negative about that, but there was I think I've told you this story before, but there was this night where I was out for dinner with a client in Brooklyn. It turned out to be a pretty sort of long dinner with appetizers, and I think we had steak, and there was wine, and then there was dessert. So kind of a an indulgent dinner.
Yeah,
and not to say anything bad about indulgent dinners, but I had recently started wearing an Apple Watch, and as I walked out of dinner, I got this alert on my watch, which was a high heart rate notification. It's just kind of like, hey, your heart rate's been above this threshold for this amount of time, and as far as we can tell, it doesn't look like you're exercising. And it was a little bit of a freak out moment. And I remember sitting in the Uber back to my hotel, kind of like watching my heart rate, trying to do deep breathing, waiting for it to go down. It wasn't going down.
Wow.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that was the moment that I wanted, that it was a single turning point, but I kind of realized
you needed to make a change.
I need to change something.
And talk to us about then what that change looked like, and maybe lead us nicely into what you do today and some of the business, this alignment of what's become a personal passion of yours, which I know you through. And again, for our audience, like Joe is like an elite runner now as well of other things, like an insane amount of marathons, and the times are unbelievable. And so this is why I shake my head, because I can't believe this version of Joe. I'm looking forward to seeing the pictures, though. I'm looking forward to seeing the chubbier version of Joe, and maybe have that against you. But I'd love you to talk about like what that transition looked like, and then how you've seemingly done a very neat job of aligning that to some of your business interests and that you do today, because I think it's a fantastic kind of story.
Yeah, if I had to summarize the kind of before chapter and the current chapter, it would be, in the past, maybe optimizing for intensity, and now optimizing for intentionality or integration.
Yeah.
So rather than the different parts of my life trading off against each other, trying to find ways in everything that I do that they reinforce each other. So my health, my work, my relationships should all be reinforcing each other and not trading off.
That is very cool. I love that, by the way. Is that something you learned in a book, on a podcast, or is that something that's almost been something you've developed yourself over the last few years, Joe?
I don't think there's any single inspiration. Definitely read a lot of books, explored a lot of content on this subject. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was any single source.
Yeah. How do you do the reinforcing? Like, I understand the optimizing for intentionality piece, but how do you, when you talk about the reinforcing, do you mind like giving an example of what that might look like?
So I think maybe the simplest example is that when I get a good workout in, I'm a better person. Period.
Totally agree. Yeah.
I can think clearer. I'm more calm, easier to get along with. And so in the past, where I might have thought, oh, I've got so much on my plate. I'm going to skip the workout today, and I'll pick it up tomorrow. I realize now that that's sort of a false trade-off. That extra time that I put into that workout will pay back in extra focus and extra productivity in the remaining hours in the day. Yeah,
that's cool. That's a great example. And I'm nodding because I'm exactly the same. And the way I've hacked this, if you like, is I wrote about this in my book, is this kind of happiness hack. And I journal every day, and then I read back my journal kind of over time and you start seeing things again and again, right? You start thinking, like, the days I'm unfairly shouting my kids, or I have a fight with my wife or whatever, there's normally a preamble to that, which is I didn't work out. Stress, like work was like so you start to see what the triggers are. And so I think it's a really, really smart and talk to us about then the kind of, obviously you've really got into health and fitness, and now maybe talk to us about the studio and the kind of startup fitness activities you do here in Toronto as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I formally left Flywheel over the summer. I've been taking some time since then to figure out what's next. And
how have you found that? Like, has that been easy?
I don't know if I would say it's been easy, but I think it's been very positive. Yeah. I've had friends from university that have taken breaks at different points in their career, and I felt like until now I've never taken a break. It was from university to grad school, to a full-time job, to starting a company, to acquire number one, to another company, to acquire number two. So it was nice to take a break. And I really tried to use this time to focus on this theme of integration. And maybe another way of thinking about it is, I'm an ambitious person. I can't really change that. Like, I want to do things, I want to build things, but taking the time to figure out how I allocate that ambition to parts of my life where I know I need to have balance. One of the projects that I'm really passionate about right now is the Burn Room, which is the fitness studio that my partner and I have co-founded here in Toronto. It is the best workout in Toronto. So if you're local, definitely come check us out.
And if you'll see me there, because I go there at least once a week. And so that's, it is amazing. And thankfully it's near my house, which makes it much easier for me. But it's amazing that you seem to have aligned your, obviously you and I have worked out standing or sitting next to each other in the Burn Room. And so for me, it really reinforces what you said about kind of, I suppose, reinforcing your own habits. So you're building a business around what you truly believe in, right? So you're not, and you can partake in it and enjoy it at the same time.
Yeah. And, my partner is the face of the business, the creative genius behind it. She's a brilliant fitness instructor, also brilliant at building community and getting people moving and believing in themselves.
Yeah.
And so, I've taken a lot of joy in being able to help build this business, leveraging some of the operational experience that I have. And so this project, really fits into my current chapter, which is personal relationships, work, and health, all reinforcing each other.
Very cool. And talk to us also, I want to just get in the startup sweats that you do as well, which I think is very, very cool initiative. And it almost goes full circle, right? That my understanding of it is impacting startup businesses and kind of how maybe fostering a habit of health and fitness amongst this community that as otherwise, can go down very bad habits like you had to endure yourself, right?
Yeah, so Startup Sweats, again, was motivated by my own interests, which is I love meeting other ambitious people. I love networking with founders and operators, but not always over drinks and food. And so Startup Sweats is a monthly meetup where we partner with a different gym. Gym will run a different style of group workout for us. So, we've done spin, we've done HIIT classes, all different styles. And then at the end, everyone sticks around for healthy drinks and snacks and networking. So we sweat and then we connect.
Yeah, sweat and connect. I love it. And again, I've been fortunate enough to attend one of these sessions and met some very, very cool people at the event at a great venue as well. And I love the snack selection because it was all like non-alcoholic beer and cool coffees and kind of healthy granola bars and stuff like that, which was right up my street. I have to ask one final question. So I hugely admire you, and we've got to know each other really, really well through the PF and through the health stuff as well, health and fitness, and actually just being a friend. But you said yourself that you're an ambitious guy, and like you always strike me as a bit of a deep thinker as well. You must, somewhere in that brain of yours, you must be thinking about what the next business is, because I'm sure the health and fitness stuff is fantastic. But I suspect, is there a part of you that wants to go again?
It's a curse, man. When I left Flywheel over the summer, I said to myself, okay, everything from now on is going to be designed around a balanced, fulfilling life, to prioritize time with my partner, to focus on my health, enjoy meeting interesting people. And whatever I do, I don't want to go back into that venture-back, soul-crushing startup world. But yeah, I have that ambition to want to build things. And
it's still that.
It's still there. And, it's a very exciting time in the industry right now. A lot of people are saying, the kind of how you allocate your time over the next year could be career-defining, life-defining. Given what's going on with AI and the pace of innovation.
Yeah.
So I may or may not be getting pulled into something else. It's a little too early to say.
Okay, but, well, you've left us with a I like that, a little hook for people to go on. And it wouldn't surprise me. And the irony of it, as I've seen with other post-exit founders, is you're more attractive now to VCs than you were at any other point, right? Because you've had that success of creating, building, scaling, exiting twice now, which is incredible. And so anyone that wants to back a founder like that you've got the Scott. You've been kind enough to share that today, and we didn't really talk about fundraising and investment and all that kind of stuff, which I'm sure you could talk about as well. But well, look, Joe, we should probably end it there. As I said, consider you a good friend here in Toronto, and it's been lovely to get to know you, but also now like knowing the backstory of you and what the pre-Joe looked like and the success that you've had in business. And I really admire this like kind of calm balance that you seem to have. I can't imagine you any other way. So I don't know what the old version looked like, but I'm happy I met the new version anyway.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.